Is the lighting okay?
Yeah,
Is the
Misha?
light okay? Is the light
Yes,
okay?
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, because I have two, three of these yellow lights and I'm unable to know which is better. So let me know if you think this is better or this is bad.
I
This is
think,
better, right?
yeah.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Good
Good
morning.
morning.
Hello, everyone. We'll just quickly start with our fireside chat today because we have a lot to learn. So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our very first Product Tank meetup on social enterprises. I'm Dr. Satyavati Khade, your host for today's event. I have been an organizer for Product Tank community for a while now, and I work at Springer Nature as a product manager and a scientific advisor for life science research product. Product Tank Pune began in February 2019 and to bring product people together to share knowledge on product management, share our experiences on various products from diverse industry sectors, and connect as product people to grow together in this community to hone the craft on product management. Now, we have seen a remarkable growth since the very beginning. We are now more than 2,400 members of product professionals, early stage and aspiring product managers. We have now more than 19 successful meetups so far. The community has built and helped more than 60 members to transition into product managers, jobs in different positions. And every month we share several product related jobs on the Product Tank WhatsApp and Slack group. Now, all of this would not have been possible without Amit Godbole. So the nucleus of Product Tank Pune and one of our key organizers who have helped day in and out to bring this all together by putting in a well-crafted roadmap and strategy so that we come together and help each other as a product community. Now, speaking of community and making a positive difference with a strong social impact, social enterprises make a remarkable standpoint. Now, those who are on Instagram and various social handles and are into lifestyle products, you must be aware that a lot of nonprofit brands are selling handcrafted apparel or lifestyle products that are created by rural artisans across India. Now, this is one example of social enterprise. Now, most of you be wondering what is in it for product professionals and what does it take to build such a social enterprise. In order to explain us just that, we have Amisha Prabhu with us. So before I introduce you the very inspiring Amisha, and I would like to put a few housekeeping points. During this session, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box. We will pick them up either during the session or later in the session. So now coming to the fireside chat, Amisha Prabhu is our guest of today, and she has more than or close to 3 decades of experience in retail industry. And she was a product manager for a physical product. And she has experience in fashion merchandising, financial planning, and retail ERP systems, and a lot more. She is a founding member of a non-profit organization called Train, which is a trust for retailer and retail associates of India. It is a public charitable trust to be a catalyst for a change in retail industry with a vision to empower people in retail. Amisha believes that technology is a prominent enabler and leveler in the future for scale to impact. Now, it can also bring a lot of change across the length and the breadth of various social systems. Now, moderating this session, we have Pooja with us, who has a very keen interest in social change and impact and sustainability. She's currently working with various student communications in higher education, podcasting about changemaker journeys, and collaborating to build a sustainable solution for the social change system. Welcome, Pooja. Welcome, Amisha. Over to you, Pooja, for the fireside chat.
Thank you. Thanks, Satya, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you, everyone, for joining us on a Saturday morning. And a big thanks to Amisha for giving us your time today. Very excited to get into the chat. So let's dive right in. I would like to start by just narrating a few lines just to set the scene. And then, Amisha, you and I can get chatting. Yeah. Change demands solutions, and in a constantly changing world, social change requires equal, if not more, resources to accelerate it. It is a landscape which asks us to switch on our human skills to operate the technical skills while thinking of sustainability across the scale and depth of impact. The social change and impact sector, which includes your NGOs, your not for profits, and your social enterprises, they present a unique opportunity to build tech enabled solutions that embed sustainable thinking at each change point. So, having said that, let's start with our fireside chat. So, Amisha, would you like to set the scene for us and walk us through your journey so far? So, Satya has already given us a little bit of introduction. So, take us through what you have been through all these years, which is a very long time. So, yeah, over to you.
I know. Thank you, Dr. Satyavati, and thank you, Pooja. It's a pleasure being with so many young people who are doing such fantastic work in the product stream. Reminds me of our days when there was not too much of online product development, but there was too many offline product development. So I am basically a economics graduate who ventured into retail by accident and stayed there for the last so many years. 3 decades sounds long, but I must tell you, it has flown by in a jiffy. I still remember that joining the first modern retail, which was Shopper Stop in 1992, the thinking on product, the thinking on relevance, the thinking on customer to what it is today is the same. So, as product managers, today, when I'm talking to you, it's very easy for me to connect. It's very easy for me to say that the way you develop products on an online or a technology world or a digitization which is taking place in this country so rampantly is the same that we would think about as a product on a shelf of a brick and mortar store. So my journey begins in Shopper Stop. And from there on, like I said, and Dr. Satyavati aptly put in, I was a product manager, but it is called buying and merchandising in retail, which means you curate products, you buy products, you develop products, you ensure that the product prices, communication, the location where you source from, which is ethical and sustainable in terms of what we talk today, are all there. So you tick off all the boxes there, including international sourcing. So, some products are available only in certain parts of India, some are available in certain parts of world. And as a product manager, you have to ensure that you bring the right product at the right price to your customer. So that has been largely my journey in terms of handling various products. So I have been in fashion merchandising, which means apparel, footwear, clothing, etc. Transcended from there to Crossword Bookstores Limited, where I was looking after books, toys, and stationery, a category and a brand which is very close to my heart even today. It is completely different product management. I mean, you would never know that you have to have 30,000, 40,000 book titles before customers can select 4 or 5 books. So that was a very interesting part of my journey. And to understand what Pooja would like in terms of reading to what Dr. Satyavati would like in terms of reading is a very difficult task and very enjoyable. So in that sense, as a product person, the challenges and the variables are many. And today, when I see this happening in target customers, today when I see this in a product development cycle, it is the same. You have to cater to your customers in terms of relevance, and in your customers in terms of the taste. So that was one. The hypermarket boom happened in India in early 2000s, and that's where I joined the bandwagon to open two or three large hypermarkets in the country with Aditya Birla Retail, and then moved on with Tata to Tesco, which is Star Bazaar today for people who are aware of the brand. And post that, I transitioned into the not for profits, I mean, not for profit space, but as I call it, it is still the same continuum. It's just that the dynamics and the bottom line changes. The work doesn't change. It still has to create impact. It still has to talk to the right stakeholders, and it still operates like a business. Only thing, instead of looking at the EBITDA and the PAT, you would look at the kind of impact that you have made. So for me, that continuum was uh, easy to transition, but I'll come to that a little later. Uh, my journey as a product person, as a product developer, has led to developing a lot of in-house brands. And the reason I say this is that when you develop a brand yourself, you are actually looking at 360-degree in terms of from the branding to the principles behind the brand to what it caters to the audience. And lastly, I have been an absolute believer in technology. So way back in 1995, when the first ERP was actually implemented in Shoppers Stop and almost first of its kind in Indian retail, I was part of it. I was the functional spec or an expert in that technology process. And since then, I have been working with all sorts of retail ERP programs. And even at Train, we have done in-house development. We've brought off-the-shelf products, but we continue to believe that technology for good, and when I say technology for good, I mean for the impact and the social good, is very, very important. I'll stop here, and we can continue after that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that's wonderful, wonderfully put, and the experience you've had so far is definitely inspiring and something I'm sure a lot of us are going to take away and learn from. So, going back a little bit to what you said, that you transitioned from a for-profit sector to the not-for-profit ecosystem, and you did mention that it works pretty much the same way. You're still speaking to different stakeholders, you're still looking at the bottom line, you're still making sure that your your vision is being carried forward. So tell us a little bit more about that. Tell us how did that experience maybe shift your perspective, or maybe add to your experience, and how valuable was that while you were transitioning?
So, Pooja, it is today, after so many years, I say it's a continuum because it
Mm.
feels like one. But when initially I started, I was very much missing the professional workspace, the glamour and the glitz of my retail industry. I don't shy away from saying this. You are day in and day out dealing with brands, international, Indian. You're dealing with products. You are at the top in terms of understanding the consumer and the products in the retail industry, and suddenly you're doing something which is different. And it is different because uh, it requires a huge amount of advocacy. Any social enterprise, any not for profit, when you start, it's not easy to convince people that this is something that you need to be doing for the good of people, for the good of earth, planet, anything. I'm not talking only of Train today. I have met a lot of colleagues in the industry who say, you know what, I was doing a waste paper management project, and that was difficult. I mean, how difficult it is to explain people that waste management could be the next big thing that would be happening. Decomposting is the next big thing that is happening. So when we meet in the circle, we realize all of us who come from a professional background are a little out of the water beginning, and then the biggest change that you need to make as a not-for-profit professional is the language. Your commercial margins, profitability, etc., language, the sales, the bottom line changes to a completely different kind of a vision, mission, and a language. The language that you speak to your stakeholders is not the same language that you speak in any commercial enterprise. And when I say language, I don't mean just physical language speaking, but the act, the actions, the projects that you undertake all have to demonstrate impact, all have to demonstrate some kind of a change or some kind of a good that you're doing. It could be just impacting one person, that's fine, but it has to impact. If you're taking up animal shelter and talking to strays, then that has to show impact. So the whole language of a not-for-profit, the expectation is not similar to what it would be in a business. Business can come, go, fail, do well, not do well. But if you have taken up the project of anything, skilling people or impacting people with disability, or making sure that young women are safe, or you're giving something to the victim survivors and giving them a livelihood, each one of it means that you have to work that much harder to show impact. So that's the change. And once you settle in, Pooja, it is very easy to not only demonstrate the change, but start thinking about the change at scale. So once you have got the hang of it and you love doing what you're doing, then you suddenly say, hey, I can do this for one person, I can do it for million, I can do it for 10,000, I can do it for 1,000. And that's where technology comes in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I hope I answered that.
No, yeah, of course you did. Yeah, I completely agree that convincing convincing people about social change or about environmental change is not an easy task. And having experienced that myself, having seen that myself, it really takes a lot from a professional in terms of bringing about that mindset and that behavior change. So you really have to craft your story in a way which is going to demonstrate that impact. And that story could be through your projects, that it could be through through the communities you're working with. So definitely, and I think you rightly put it. That's also a good segue into our next question, and that is social change or any kind of change which we are thinking of scaling further. It has multiple enablers. So you have your partnerships, you have your supporters, you have your funders, you have your infrastructure, be it physical or technological. But at the heart, at the core, at the center of it are your people and are your communities, the people that you are impacting or the people that you're working for every day in and day out. So in your journey so far with Train, or even before Train, can you tell us about the communities that you've been working with? Maybe paint us a picture of what that looks like and how they interact and come together to really take this forward.
Very, very broad question for us at Train. I'll tell you why. Because there are three sorts of communities that we work with. And you're absolutely right. Along the way, not only you build communities, but you build an ecosystem which actually talks the same language, expects the same things, and probably are going through the same troubles and pains that everybody else in that community is going through. So there are 3 or 4 communities largely that Train works with, and probably has developed a, I would say, stakeholder management with them. One is the retail community at large. All of you go to the malls and the high streets to shop. All of you see the young girls and boys who work behind the counters, whether it is your favorite Big Bazaar girl who is showing you the products, or you're going to a Zara, or you're going to a West Side, or a Shoppers Stop. You have young girls and boys who are working. Chances are they don't come from such affluent or probably well-to-do backgrounds. They come from communities where sometimes financial pressures are very, very high, and they at a very young age have to leave their education and start working. This community is prevalent in retail, very, very, you will see it across board. So it is not something that you will only see in Mumbai or Pune or Bangalore. You will see it across the length and breadth of the country, where young girls and boys, and today it also means the Zomato and Swiggy delivery boys, the e-commerce delivery persons, where the learning curve and the entry barrier to retail is very, very low. So this community is a community where the way we are recognizing frontline workers today, through COVID and what has happened in the pandemic, and we talk about frontline workers, retail has had these frontline workers for years,
Yeah.
but unfortunately they are not recognized as a community. And what Train has tried to do is bring all of them together, of course through various means and methods. But one is to say that, is there a way that we can, through their retailers, through their employers, connect with them, look at what they require, whether it is upskilling, whether it is skilling themselves, whether it is access to microfinance, or very, very intangible need like just giving them enough respect and pride by recognizing them. So Train has various programs, whether it is Train Retail Awards for Customer Service Excellence, where you would see a guy from a Titan I Plus in Agra winning the award, and not necessarily anybody from a metro or a mini metro. Or you would have Train has conceptualized a very simple property called Retail Employees Day, which is celebrated on 12th of December, which just recognizes the retail associate to say, thank you for your efforts. 365 days retail is open. You guys worked the hardest on Diwali and Dasera and 26th of Jan, when we are actually relaxing at our home, but retail is the busiest. So this is one day that we thank the retail community. So community initiatives, whether it is asking them to run the marathons, or like I said, access to microfinance, or counseling with a tie-up with Tata Institute of Social Sciences, so they can talk to various counselors. These are few things that we do for the people in retail. Coming to another community where we create livelihood is a community of young people, young persons with disability, and young women. This is a community where we actually run programs, training programs, which talks to them, uh, creates an entire training program which is beneficial for them to get a job in retail, and then give them jobs in various stores. You will not even imagine a person with speech and hearing impairment actually serving you at a Costa Coffee or a CCD or a probably at a Max or a lifestyle store. And these are the jobs that we've created over the last 10 years. We've trained 18,000 people with disability, and we have trained more than 4,000 young women in the last 2 years, and given them jobs in retail. So that's another community that we talk to on a regular basis. And in the interest of time, I'm not getting too much in detail, but the third community is our two stakeholders, our NGO partners who work locally on ground to mobilize people, to source people with disability and young women. These NGO partners are so local, and they do such impactful work. It is impossible for me to elaborate it in 2 3 minutes out here, but they are very small. They need a platform, and Train provides that platform. They need a platform because they are so localized. So if I'm working in let's say Bangalore, in say Bannerghatta, then I'm an NGO who works only there. But what Train does is ties up with them, works with them for the local community, so that local youth get the jobs, as well as we have donors and funders who work with us to elevate that community. And then that entire trained youth goes back into the retail community with jobs. So you've created a cycle where you've impacted
Yeah.
via your donors, NGO partners, the youth who are there in that community, and retail in turn. So it's like a complete cycle that we do. But
Yeah.
like you said, Pooja, it's endless. I mean,
I know.
I can go on talking about it, and this is
Yeah.
this is like a day job. Every day you are talking and building newer communities.
Yeah, and that's how you scale impact as well, because one small community can easily multiply into 10 different communities which are hyper local
Absolutely.
and
Yes.
affecting change within their circle. So that's brilliant. And I also like that you have connected all the key players of the ecosystem, and you're making sure that it's running in that circular loop, and
Yes.
not there's no
Yeah. There's no.
gap
There's
that.
no. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, brilliant. Before we move on, Satya, do we have would we like to invite questions? Are we
Yeah. I think so. Let's invite a few questions. Let's give a few seconds.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
And if you have, yeah. So any questions on uh, a perspective that Amisha has given on retail industry, especially when we are walking into Zara shops or in the malls, the people who are working there. I think it's such a different perspective right now because yeah, you it's empathizing with okay, yeah, not everyone comes from the same background and what would have been their journey to come here actually. So it's a fantastic insight. Let's see if there are any questions popping up. If not, I think let's continue. Yeah, let's continue.
Okay. All right. Great. So now it gets interesting for our audience who's from the product management landscape, because we are going to talk about all things tech and how Train has managed to really use technology as an enabler to scale impact. So Amisha, you painted us a picture of how Train is breaking the barriers of inclusion, where you're thinking about the women, you're thinking about people with disabilities, you're putting yourself in a retail associate's place and trying to trying to make it as collaborative and inclusive as possible. So and you said that tech has really played a huge role in making this happen at a larger scale. So tell us a bit more about these initiatives and how have they really helped you so far? And yeah.
Yeah. So, one of the things that to understand in the beginning is that any not for profit, any charitable organization is governed very strictly by the laws of the land. So, not only you are under a scrutiny, but you have to be very transparent in your dealings. Otherwise, there is the reason why people always think that a not for profit may be not doing what they are promising, because they must be just another organization which is just probably taking money and doing nothing. So the level of transparency that a not for profit has to bring on the table is very high. And what technology does, the first point, technology can help improve transfer not only transparency, which is very important for not for profit, because the it is used for the purpose of helping communities, so you have to be transparent. But manual processes in any not for profit cost more, right? So if you have any kind of automation or technology that is built in, then the frugal team that any not for profit has will be able to do many more things to impact the community, do fundraising, do social media, do probably go and meet more people, create more networks, rather than doing, hiring one more accountant or hiring three more people to manage the same project if it can be done by technology. So that is the first two rules, that it just eases out transparency, and it makes efficiency a number one priority. That is one. The second is that a lot of technology is built for scale, so that they can advance in their mission. Any not for profit always has a larger mission, which is not for today or tomorrow, but probably 3 years down the line or 5 years down the line. And if they have to do that, and India being probably 10 Europes put together, is a large country. So everything is so different out here that unless and until you have technology, you will not be able to scale. So that's the first level in terms of saying that how do we leverage technology, and at Train we've done that beautifully. So the first thing is that when a donor gives you a huge sum of money, you have to account for rupee ana paisa. So you need an ERP which starts tracking every rupee and where it goes. So technology is not about building a platform. Technology is about, if you heard me say that we work with local NGOs, we work with youth, we work with retailers. Now, how do you tie all that in? So you need a technology starting point to say that this is where I am going to start, by actually putting the data of the youth who are going through the training, what is the training that they go through, create a e-learning platform where the training happens, and from there then there are placements that are going to happen which goes to retailer. everything can be done via technology, and each technology is pretty intricate. It's not easy 101 basic that you're talking about, because here you're talking about a huge amount of audit trails, a lot of compliance, a lot of governance, a lot of data flowing into each other's system, which actually is sometimes confidential. So you have to build technology which is agile, which is probably more intuitive in nature, so that it is built for future and not for today. So at Train, what did we do? I'll take an example of our livelihood programs where in the first few years we realized that we had like 30, 40 centers running across the country, and we were still doing manual registration of students, uploading of documents, and then pushing it to another system, which was to the government system, where we would get their assessments done. And not getting into detail, but we actually worked with a Bangalore-based company called Goodera. They work with not-for-profits, and they build a system which is called NextGen, and that is a system which completely does batch management and donor management. So from onboarding a partner by doing due diligence, to creating batch tracking, to ensuring that the placement proofs are put into place, and then generating donor reports, it's a continuum. So that is something that very early on Train actually invested in. And this is actually done by a company called Goodera, which works with not for profit. The second thing that we did is, for example, when I spoke about earlier about Train Retail Awards for customer service excellence, from day one, 11 years back, we actually worked on a digital platform to invite entries from the length and breadth of the country. We did not have a paper entry forms, nomination form. It was all done on a system called Wooker, if you've heard of that system. And from receiving entries, sieving the entries with EY as our auditor, to sending the same entries to the jury, who would look at it on that same platform and evaluate it independently without each other knowing, and then coming and collating the scores. This is the second thing that we did. So a lot of technology that has been used in Train over the years has been for project basis. So we don't have one technology that works, because it is all different projects. The third was a platform that we built in-house called Rise, RISE, which was like a mini Naukri.com for our persons with disability and young women. It was literally the youth that we had trained. We would put them on that portal, and retailers who wanted to hire them would have access to their profile, could schedule interviews, could do a video call, etc., etc. So that was a third technology platform that we built. I mean, I can go on, but I'll just stop here at this point in time.
I definitely agree with you when you say that transparency and accountability are two very demanded qualities when you look at the social change ecosystem. And a message that I would like to convey today to product managers or aspiring professionals in the product management landscape is that there is abundance of opportunity, because as you said, there's not one single platform that's going to solve all the problems, because each of the problems in this sector are so, like, you really need to have that context, and based on that context you have to start thinking of how to really address those problems. So while the problems are many, the solutions are also very exciting, and I'm very excited to see how we are able to inspire and get more product managers to transition into the social sector. So that's just a little bit from me, but yeah.
Pooja, can I add here? Uh, Technology which is made for an audience like your donors, like your retailers, tend to always probably have huge amount of success. But when you have, for example, last year in pandemic, when we had to transition and shut our 52 centers across India, which were doing training for persons with disability. There were 726 people in the classroom, and we had about 13 centers for young women across the country, and it had about 220 women in the classroom. Now, here, overnight, we had to transition into e learning or virtual learning. And at that time, you realize it's so easy. Everybody has a
Yeah.
phone. Everybody has, this is my e learning. I, as a NGO, have created a e learning platform, and it's very easy for people to switch over. What we don't realize is that adoption of technology and access to technology is still a challenge in this country. We have access to data, but we may not have access to those many smartphones in the house where young women or youth with disability would be given the first preference to say, "Ye lo, aapka e-learning
Yeah.
kar lo." So we faced a huge challenge. We transitioned and we realized out of the 700, 500 were like struggling to get the phones. So there was no smartphone for us to ask them to download something or go through the app. The second challenge was easily mitigated. You had to give them some kind of a bandwidth and internet. That was easy. Now you have the geos of the world, etc. So that was still easy. The third is that in spite of not having smartphones, everybody wanted to learn, but what do you do with people with disability? Our deaf
Yeah.
youth needed a sign language interpreter, and so we had to do a blended learning model. Every day we would have Zoom or a Google Meet classes for 2 to 3 hours, and then give them self learning on the tech platform to say, okay, now this is the part you need to learn and come back to classroom the next day. So you still had to do a sign language interpreter for our deaf students. We still had to have physical trainers who would take classes for 2 to 3 hours a day. And actually work with young women when they would have access to the smartphone in the house. So if a father or the mother was working and she needed the smartphone, then it would only be available to them post 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So getting technology is also sometimes easy, but creating access and adoption is still a challenge. And this is why I'm saying this, because I'm talking to you guys as product managers. We have to create a low friction and accessibility as one of the largest probably things to keep in mind, to say how can I create no or low friction so that it is easy for the person to adopt that technology, adopt that digitization, or be part of that entire I would say the process, whether it is a e-learning process or the job portal, anything that we speak about today. So that's something that I wanted to interject. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, very, very important points. And I think very much talked about after the year we've had. And it's good to always first think of the challenges because, like you said, adoption is the digital divide has been magnified last year than ever before, and we're still trying to combat that, irrespective of which sector. So very important points. So we do have some questions coming in. Satya, do you want to take over?
I think in very much in continuation with um, consumer focus or digital focus. So one of our audience is asking any suggestion for product managers in digital space. Are product managers in digital space more focused on digitization rather than consumer, or it is right to focus on digitization and then customers will follow? What is the right order to for product managers in digital space according to you?
So there is. Uh, I'm not trying to sit on a fence here, and I have said this many times. As a believer of technology, I would tell you one thing. Sometimes it is better to have over digitization and not think of the consumer, because that's the need that you would create. And that's what happened. If you saw what happened with demonetization, if there was no Paytm, how would we have survived? So there was no traction when Paytm was launched, and it was only for a handful of people, and they were dreaming that they could reach that many numbers. But when demonetization happened, Paytm, MobiKwik, the works, the wallet companies flourished. So sometimes it helps, and I'm not saying this only for social sector. I'm saying as product managers, as general, sometimes we build products which are futuristic, which are probably the need that you create in the minds of the consumer tomorrow. And that's how you have so many unicorns being born today, because they've seen the need, they've collated the I would say the need of the collective, and to say that let's build a product. But a lot of times products are built in uh, the term that Alibaba uses, build in basements without any relevance to the customer. And those products struggle. I'm not saying they're not successful, they struggle. Unless and until you understand what is it that the customer wants and why the customer, even if you're creating a need in the minds of the customer, your narrative has to be very strong. Why should I do this? Why am I going to come on your platform? uh, Cred, you guys understand these new age products, so I'm using these examples. There are many in retail, but that probably might be a bit lost. Cred today, I mean, pay your credit card bills and get whatever, whatever. And when you hear Kunal Shah speaking about that tomorrow, the cred rewards will actually have a Mercedes or probably the luxury products. So it's a product which is built probably for tomorrow, not today. And somebody thought of it and somebody thought about it today. So we need product managers who can actually build on digitization, will think tomorrow. But it doesn't work till such time that you have to download it, uh, ask the customer to say use it. Otherwise, it will not work. It will not work. I've seen it happen. I have seen it happen, and there are people who spend a lot of money, but there is no need. And the need is not because it is not there in that priority list. The need could be a very latent need. So in the priority in my life today, between 1 to 10, I think this is 8, so I don't want to do it now. And this is where you have to bring that priority from number 8 to number 3 or 4, so then I start looking at that product. So there's no correct answer, but an over engineered product, as per all sorts of heads of information technology that I speak to, they say sometimes an over engineered for product with a lot of bells and whistles will land you nowhere if your customer is not going to use it. So it is, you have to think of your customer. So you could put out a very simple product, but it actually looks at your need, and it fulfills your need, and that is the best product, I would say, today.
There's one follow-up question which is, I think, so it's so much in continuation. I can't help but ask. For most of the businesses and startups, they are very technology centric. They prefer building solutions from scratch rather than buying. For Train, how do you make these decisions of building from scratch or buying? Yeah.
So, had you asked me this question 3 years back, I would have said I use my retail philosophy, which is sometimes you say build, sometimes you say buy, and sometimes you say collaborate. So, so sometimes you buy, sometimes you build, sometimes you just collaborate. So, in retail, we used to do that. I'm going to do an analogy here and then come to your answer. You normally, for a fact that you can create the same brands that a branded product is creating. You can have the same brands because you understand where it is coming from. Whether it's a Louis Philippe shirt or a Van Heusen shirt, you can create the same brand in house, but the brand holds certain value. The brand holds certain economic considerations, whether it is scale, whether the economies of scale, whether it is a pricing, or whether it is customer preference. Similarly, if I had to build a donor management system myself and not work with Goodera, I, as a trust, would have incurred a lot of monies which would otherwise be utilized for something else. So at that time, we decided to buy and not build. But in the last 3 years, that's why I'm saying, we also got bitten by the Kida to develop and build ourselves. And we did build. I mean, we did build Rise, like I told you, which is like a mini job portal. And I would say we found moderate success because, like I said, a lot of things that you still need to keep building. And a company whose core job, day job, is to build products is much better at it than probably a small not for profit like us. So there are decisions that we would have made which are in the past was always to buy, but in the last 2 3 years we feel that with tech becoming so accessible, and so many good people who are there to develop it for you, we have also dabbled in building the systems. And I personally feel there's nothing right or wrong here, but a lot of collaboration is what I see in future, especially with this pandemic. I don't see anybody building it, but more collaborating it and probably buying it.
Yes, and I think as you said, how you made decisions 3 years ago and today is different. So
Yeah.
how are the key measures of success? So what are the key measure of success for social sectors, for example? Because if you have to choose, then there has to be certain key measures for if this is successful, is it reaching my goal? Then what are they actually? Yeah.
So, and I speak in a general term, not only for train, but any social sector or any social enterprise is governed by the vision more so than any other business also. And that vision, if it is a straight line vision of just one thing, you're focused on one thing, like if it's an animal shelter, or it's a saving the planet, or creating zero carbon footprint, or in train it could be training 10,000 persons with disability in a year. Those are the governing principles which will lead you for that year, or for that 18 24 months vision that you've had. So the key measures of this success is if you have created any kind of impact targets, any impact targets. That is what is the first measure of success. You have done it frugally, transparently, and with compliance. That's your second measure of success, because you are using funding which is from the public, or from people who are probably believing in that cause and donating to you. So that is a second measure of success, that have you done it in the least possible amount with least wastage. And the last thing is that, is your trust or is your not for profit built for scale to carry on this for the next few years, or is it just a one off project that you've had? So your key measure of success is when your donor or your funder keeps coming back to you and doing larger and larger programs with you, because they also believe that their CSR mandate gets fulfilled through you. So it is very important to have a continuum or a continuous relationship. I mean, some of our large supporters are very large companies and banks, and they don't have a 1 year vision. They will probably have a 3 or 4 year vision to say, we want to impact youth with disability, or we want to impact young women. And so your key measure of success is, if you've impacted them this year, then your partners stay with you for a longer period of time.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense, and I think it's so much similar to how digital product manager or management also happen. You need to keep engaging. You need to keep retaining your users. As you say in the digital space, and retaining your
Yes.
customers for a long time. Yeah. Over to you, Pooja, for the next session.
Great. Awesome. So Amisha, you did say a little bit about how Train managed to, I would say, pivot during COVID. Last year has been difficult for retail, as we've all seen. And so during that time, what insights can you share with us on how Train adapted and also pivoted to sustain your vision?
Uh, I already shared about the e-learning, but I'll just
Hmm.
talk about it a little more. So, like I said, on 16th of March, I think when we got the news, we had 52 centers, and we were actually like a bullet train, because 31st March you have to complete your financial year. So, and then you start working on quarterly reports, etc. So we were like ramping up at the last 2 months, February and March, and we had, like I said, 200 odd women in classrooms in 13 centers. Overnight they shut. So, two troubles. One is, some of our centers are residential centers. And for example, if we have a center in Bangalore, then the students would come from nearby villages, and they all went back. And they all just disappeared because they had to go back before the 24th lockdown would kick in. So everybody just packed their bags and went off. It was very difficult to find 726 people with no access to email, or somebody may have changed their phone number or didn't have their phone number. To get them back by May, April, we were digitizing the entire curriculum on our platform, which is Train Circle, which is a social enterprise, and which is an app that we have, which I spoke about earlier, which gives access to counseling, microfinance, all for the retail associate. That app also has a learning management system, which we started in-house, entire content digitization, so that we could train the balanced people, because we had committed to our donors and to our stakeholders and to retailers that these are the youths that are going to be available for jobs and would complete their training. So that was a very difficult time, Pooja, because we had to get back all of them into a classroom. We had to do entire train the trainer with our local NGO partners. The trainers themselves found it so difficult to teach online, to teach from a mobile phone. Mind you, uh, it is not as easy as you and me sitting here. We have individual rooms to ourselves. I mean, I am sitting in one room from last 1 hour and there's nobody to disturb me. I am talking about teachers who were staying in one room and had their entire family, and they had to teach either from a mobile phone or on a laptop, which they had to hire or borrow or whatever. So the entire I would say the reality was real. I mean, it couldn't have got better last year. uh, to see, after, despite all this, the trainers still teaching the students for 3 hours a day, the students still trying to, I mean, I could have shared some pictures with you guys. You had a screen full of Zoom or Google Meet with like 100 students out there listening to their teacher, and understanding what retail was all about. And once that momentum started, and I already spoke about the challenges on smartphone, I spoke about data and connectivity, which was still an issue, and we mitigated those to a large extent. And what happens is, once they finish training, they actually got jobs. So the biggest challenge that our donors had was that retail has laid off almost 1.5 lakh people. I mean, how are your 700 people or 200 people going to get job? There are enough non-disabled people and so many youth available in every city, because everybody has laid off people. How do you think you are going to manage getting placements? But what we did there is we started looking at new avenues. We did not only stick to retail malls, which were still shut, because malls only opened after October. So we started looking at Amazon warehouses. We started looking at grocery retailing. We started looking at local retailers. We started looking at government volunteering, where they were COVID volunteers on call center, because our disabled youth could actually do any kind of calling, not the deaf youth, but the ones with locomotor disability. And we found jobs for each one of them. And that to me was a very big success, because working from home, managing so many people in so many parts of India, and then getting them jobs, I at least felt that we were true to our vision. And we did lesser number. We could only train about 1,500 persons with disability, and we could only train about 900 odd young women from our original impact targets that we had created. But having said that, I must say that everybody supports you. Your partners, your NGO, the community, everybody supported us to do this. The other thing that we pivoted was to collect funds for COVID relief, people who lost jobs in retail. We wanted, especially the young women who lost jobs, because one another story I must tell you, that young women in retail who are married and they leave their homes, their babies, and come and work, do have serious financial compulsions. Besides people, of course, who want to aspire and have a retail career, a lot of young women, are there because they need to substantiate their family income with their income. And these young women, when they lost their jobs, it was very difficult. So we did a series of webinar, which were actually very interesting fundraising webinars, called Retail Panchayat. We bought the best of speakers, and they all donated to the cause, and we managed to collect 1 crore. And we impacted young women who had lost their job by giving them a actual cash benefit for a period of 3 months. So that is something that we did, which was different. That's not part of our everyday day job, but we said let's collect money. We have some monies left over, and we are saying that can we use it for COVID vaccination of frontline workers in retail. So that's something that we are planning right now.
Some wonderful learnings and a great initiative. I think that the last year has really sparked all these brilliant ideas
Innovation.
and a lot
Yeah.
of innovation, which is very much required in the social change landscape. I think innovation and technology will really help. And luckily, I wouldn't say luckily, but because of COVID, it has pushed us in this direction, and hopefully we keep going further and um, soar higher. All right, so we've zoomed into the retail sector, but now if we had to zoom out a little bit, and if we had to look at the social and environmental change landscape across different sectors, let's say, and of course this is based on your experience and based on the based on the partnerships and supporters you have in the communities you've built. So if you had to look at all the other sectors that are also full of opportunities, um, could you tell us what role tech will play in scaling change across all these sectors? So this is again a question that comes to remind our community that there are opportunities out there in the landscape, and all we need to do is really start making ourselves aware of where they are, and how one can enter and how one can really contribute to that exciting solution that is required.
And you mean across industries, across not only social
Yeah.
sector, right?
uh, uh, Zooming into the social sector, like focusing more on the social sector.
So uh, any technology, a lot of product people, product managers today are they are so aligned to a lot of causes. Uh, Gone are the days when this was a different field than the commercial part of it. You know, when growing up, we used to see not for profit as something else, and we would see this. But today the lines are blurred. A lot of commercial organizations do have one arm which is doing some amount of CSR, they have some amount of CSR mandates, or they are doing something which is like a social enterprise which works with the communities. And I think today product managers are very aligned. They innovate and they build sustainable tech solutions to advance the mission of those organizations. Uh, and it could be as simple as I'm just stepping back from website and content management that not for profit doesn't even know how to do. So from website or mobile applications, very simple things to say, input here and output there. I'll give you an example where JP Morgan Force for Good is a arm where a lot of techies, as they call it, would like to just dedicate some time to build solutions for not for profit. And there was this whole thing about picking up newspapers from one area, or everybody's raddi as you call it, and then taking it to an NGO who would convert it into bags, etc. And for that it was always one physical thing which we had to do. And JP Morgan got this project, they did it. So Pooja sitting here somewhere say, please pick up so many newspaper. One volunteer will say, hey, I'm passing this way, I'm going to pick up this
Oh,
newspapers and I'll dump it in my car. And then the third one will say, put it here. So it just became so efficient and so interesting. The community refrigerators that you see at various places nowadays, which has food. So all your leftover food gets placed in a refrigerator in a particular area where the homeless and people who require it can take it. That again is governed by an app. So where did we know that mobile applications can do so many things? And that's thanks to you guys. I mean, you have changed the way people have thought about that. It is so difficult to make it thinking, wow, it's so easy. Data analytics. Social enterprises require a huge amount of data science and data analytics to see how my impact can be improved, how can it grow exponentially. Let's not forget that when I say 18,000 persons with disability, I can say this so confidently because I have data and I have an ERP system that supports me. But just imagine if at a country level you have to put in all together there's no scientific data, or there's not one cohesive unit which will have this. So for social enterprises and anything that we do today, you look at Arogya Setu, it's become a go-to app for everybody because the government has put in so much of pressure, thought process, saying that this is good for you. And this is what we need to do even in social enterprises from a technology perspective. Probably build seamless e-learning portals, build seamless technology where people can volunteer, and it could volunteer into, like, you have the Give Indias and the Ketos of the world that help you in fundraising. But there's so many avenues. I'm not trying to subscribe or prescribe anything here. I'm only trying to say that tech for good is here to stay.
Yeah.
It will. It's very important as communication platforms which we can build, learning management systems we can build. Why not a Udemy or a Coursera for not for profit? So there are thought processes, and I'm sure all the product managers who are here today are probably innovating or thinking on those lines already. I'm not saying anything new.
Wonderful. I agree with so many of your points, and that's also adding to what I have already learned, and in fact validating what I am learning. So thanks for that. All right, Satya, do we save the questions for the end, or do you want to take them now?
I think we are already past 12, so we need to take questions now, keeping in
Okay.
mind that we have limited time left. So Shrikant Jangam asks, we run NGO named Prangan Foundation, and we have 50 to 60 educators teaching English or for underprivileged children. How can we teach progress of children using some platform with automation?
You mean how can we
Track, track
track
progress.
the track progress of the children using automation? So Shrikant, thanks for this question. This is a very good thing that you're doing, teaching English. I think it's always been an aspiration as well as a need of the hour. um, so there are apps which are very basic apps that are developed. I saw this in one of the meetings that I attended, which not only helps you learn English in a colloquial manner, with phonetics. So it is not about learning ABCD, but more from a phonetic perspective. Uh, so it will be Shan. TION is Shan. So everywhere it is Shan, which means nation, exhibition. So it is taught in the language like a Marathi or a Hindi to the students to say how English is learned. So you could look at some of these apps which are available for your educators, and they are, I think, free of cost, or they have a very nominal fee. And to track the progress of the children, what we normally, as in education, talk about is the flashcard way of learning. So traditionally, when we were in school, we used to have these flashcards. So today, Shrikant, there are a lot of gaming and simulation level of teaching. So if you look at apps like English Bolo, they are a little expensive, but for your students, which is from KG to 12 standard, there are a lot of English apps which will track progress from level 1, level 2, and at every level there is an assessment or an interaction or a simulation or a game based progress that you can track, so that your kids find it very easy. They also understand कि जो सीखा है वो, is it possible for them to repeat it, or have they understood it or not understood it? I hope I answered your question, but there are a lot of apps available, so I'm sure you could use one of them, and not build yourself.
Thank
No,
thank
but the reason I say this is you can track the progress of the children. You will immediately see a change because these apps are so easy, and it tracks it on a level basis progress. So you can use quiz, exams, assessments and then only ask them to go to the next level.
Thank you, Amisha. I hope Shrikant gets his answers here. Next question is from Mangesh Kirkar. He asked, what was the initial thought behind setting the train? What actually triggered the entire foundation?
So Train is a Mangesh trust set up by Mr. B.S. Nagesh. Mr. B.S. Nagesh is the founder employee of Shopperstop. He is considered icon in the modern retail, where he has been instrumental in setting up not only Shopperstop, continues to be the chairman at Shopperstop, but also created the Retailers Association of India, which is an apex body for all the retailers to come together as an association. His personal philosophy, Mangesh, has been 25 years of learning, 25 years of earning, and 25 years of giving back or returning. When he turned 50, he wanted to give back to the community that has given him so much, which is the retail community. And that's where uh, we spoke. And at that time, I was with Tesco. I was looking after non-food, and he spoke about it to say, let's do something for the retail community, but for the people who are least impacted. We could have taken a mission to impact only retailers or large retailers or small retailers, but we our trust is trust for retailers and retail associates of India, which means that we are looking at the people. And that's where we looked at 4 or 5 objectives, and that was the initial thought of starting this trust, by the people of retail, for the people of retail, and done by a retailer who today has no interest and is not a beneficiary of this trust. He has dedicated this entire trust to retailers and retail associates in case the trust doesn't exist anymore. So that was the initial thought, that we'll work for the retail community.
Thank you, Amisha. Now the next question is: looking back, are you happy with what you have achieved? What is achieved by Train or by you? And what are those action points that could have been done?
So, every year I'm unhappy. And then I have a board meeting. We have a very, very, very good board. Somebody can check it out on our website, and they really help us keep the check and balance part of it. And when they look at the milestones that we've achieved for that year, and I always have a sad face to say, "Ye nahi hua." He's like, the board says, "Bahut acha hua." And to me, that is the biggest pat on the back that I feel when it comes from an outsider and not myself looking at my progress report. The second thing is, which makes us happy, is our continuous relationship with our partners, retailers, donors, which means that we are doing something right. I'm not trying to say numbers, etc., but just that those relationships mean a lot. And did we not do a lot of things? Yes, quite a few things. I mean, it's been on the paper. We've not been able to execute them, largely because every NGO has a constraint of capital, people, and resources. And there are things that we would like to do which we haven't done. Let me tell you one thing. I kept talking about digitization. I kept talking about how people with disabilities face trouble. So simple thing would be, can we convert this entire curriculum into a digital curriculum with sign language interpretation? Correct. I mean, I could convert this whole thing, so it will not be assistive learning. It will just be a video series, because all our speech and hearing impaired youth use video calling. I mean, it's become very easy for them to speak to each other with video calling. But I haven't been able to convert this entire curriculum into a digital curriculum, purely because of resources at my disposal, and that at the end of the day you don't feel very happy about. So that's one thing. I have lots of things. I think that gives us the speed to keep going, because then you say, okay, ye bhi karna hai, wo bhi karna hai. So yeah, not always happy.
We have tons of questions coming in, but in the interest of time, I'll ask one last question.
Sure.
Pratik Mehta asked, given that startups are tech centric, how do you propose they can contribute to bring social change by partnership or volunteering?
So a part of what you do, Pratik, can be time, effort, or innovation in terms of creativity, through partnership or volunteering, can be offered to any not-for-profit. A lot of tech startups have amazing amount of energy, which probably large organizations don't have, and that energy can be channelized to probably work with the problem statement that any not for profit has. Like I said about this newspaper, or like I'm talking about my digitization of entire curriculum for the youth with disability. These are the things that in partnership or volunteering that you can contribute. And believe me, it will require some amount of patience. Not everybody in the social sector is very tech savvy. They are actually, sometimes they call themselves tech retard, because they'll be like, listen, we don't know anything about it. So there needs to be a little bit of patience. But I always believe startups have the most amount of energy, most amount of innovation, and if you can use little bit of that innovation to deliver some good in the nearest charitable trust or a NGO that you have near your house, and ask them how they would like to use it, or what is their problem statement. It'll be wonderful. I mean, it'll be really wonderful, because let me tell you one thing, Pratik, people do not have money to invest in tech. All this is something that you have to channelize and try thinking how you're going to build this, and then start thinking where will you get the monies from. So there's not a culled out IT budget that is there. uh, normally it is not there.
Very inspiring. As I said, there are tons of questions, but our moderators are saying this last one question, and then we'll definitely close. Is Kinjal Thakkar asks, can you share like 5 things that someone is trying to bring a change like you have done in this time and age should do to create impact? Like 5 things, you know. Yeah.
uh, One is a age old thing that you may like any cause, any. Okay, it could be the cause closest to your heart, and let me give you an example here. I know somebody who heads philanthropy and CSR head for the very big organization, multi-billion organization, Forbes 500 list. Her favorite cause is not what she does in her job. Her favorite cause is stray animals. So adopt a cause, anything that you like. It could be water conservation, creating lesser of a carbon footprint, and take a bike to work. Absolutely fine. And then try to see if you can help people. Even Kinjal, just talking to them for an hour is important. Sometimes all they need is a sounding board and a motivation, or to say that look at things from others' perspective. So if we can do that, my own example is that when I was in retail, I'm so passionate about retail brands and creating brands that till date, I give some amount of my time to new and upcoming brands. I create assortment plans for them. I tell them how to actually create a product, because that's something that gives me a lot of joy. And for that startup, it is like getting 20 years of experience, 30 years of experience, and somebody telling them, this collar will not look nice and this color will not look nice, and it is something which is valuable. They'll not be able to afford it. So I am saying, take any cause which is very very close to your heart. If you can give time, nothing like it. If you can give money, absolutely fine. And if you can create partnerships with them and help reach their message exponentially, then that would be very good. Answering your question, if you want to be a professional, then I think it's fantastic. We need more and more corporate people joining the not for profit world, because the kind of expertise that a corporate world teaches you, a complete 180 degrees in terms of understanding the business intricacies, is very much needed in the world of not for profit. Today not for profit is literally looking for people who come with a corporate background and have decided to move over to the dark side, as we call it. so so yes, Kinjal, you can do a lot. I mean, I can go on as to how we can create impact, but it can start with your own local community, and it can go on. And this is not activism. I am not advocating activism. That's a different sort of a thing. This is more about doing stuff. And I remember Pooja telling me she was doing Teach for India, and I have a lot of youth in my. I stay in Mumbai, in an area called Lokhandwala, and I have a lot of 19 and 20-year-old who've been teaching as volunteers for Teach for India, and they are like, we are so happy. I mean, they're just 19, they're in the second, third year of college, and they're like, but the people that we are teaching, they feel that we are like superhuman beings.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think, in a small way, I hope that answered your question. Sometimes I tend to talk a lot.
I think all your examples are so relevant, and it's so I would say eye opening, because many of times we just don't get to see that perspective, and not only questions like from our audience, we have a lot of appreciation that is coming in. So, moderators, can you please flash some of them?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. I must thank you guys for calling me. Thanks.
And really, this brings in a lot of knowledge about social enterprise. This 1 hour,
Yes.
it's I think more than hour. I didn't even realize we passed an hour.
Yeah,
uh,
same.
it is so engaging, and our audience is also so interested, and have had patience to even stay beyond an hour. And all the points, especially around what you have done during COVID times, about disabilities, about how you bring in change and adopt technologies for the people who are not yet into that system. These points actually, Amisha, have helped us to gain a very different perspective, and also to keep that in mind when we are also building digital products. We just kind of ignore a certain aspects very easily. And with this, I would really like to thank that you have come to Product Tank Pune, have given us such an amazing and very precious time of yours. Pooja, for moderating this session amazingly. Your questions were so good. And we have behind the scenes who are flashing in questions, who are actually managing all of this, are our
Yes.
moderators. Rupal and Pradnya, if you can switch on your camera if possible. These are the moderators who are behind the scenes and making this entire event so smooth, with and with so seamless. And with this, I am closing today's Product Tank Pune meetup session. Any closing remarks from you, Amisha, Pooja, Pradnya, Rupal? All welcome.
I would.
I just want to, sorry, go ahead, Pooja.
No, go ahead, Amisha.
I just want to say a very big thank you, Product Tank Pune, for doing this, and for inviting me. I truly feel that product managers are the most important cog in the wheel in any organization. And what you think, what you innovate, what you bring to the table is very important. So thanks for listening to me. I have read all your comments, and this is very humbling. And I know that it not for profit sounds very non glamorous, but the kind of work that everybody is doing in this industry, everybody, it will require your kind of expertise. So go to the nearest, charitable trust or a not for profit, and ask them if you can help them with any kind of tech. Like I said, even doing a small, pretty website or just a mobile app will create a huge difference for their working in that local community. Thank you.
Pooja?
Yeah, I would like to thank Product Tank Pune for inviting me, for letting me have this chat with Amisha. Amisha, you are a wonderful person who has backed by many years of experience, and I would feel I'm privileged to be having this conversation with you and learning from you, and I will definitely keep in touch. And also thanks to all the volunteers for making this such a seamless process. And a message to all the product managers. I'll just quote this meme that I had seen online, and that was directed to the millennials, and it said, "You spent the last 35 years as product managers. Now it's time to come to the social change landscape." So I hope in the next few years we see more of you, we see more of your time, effort, and innovation, because it is very much required. So thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
Rupal.
Yeah, Amisha, thank you so much for this amazing session. Like literally was able to connect myself with all the examples that you gave. So it was a lot of insights into what we can actually do. We see these things happening around us day in day out, but it's really it's really the time to step into the shoes of people who are making a change. Like you are making such an impactful change of improving the lives of everyone around you. So thank you so much for this insightful session. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
Pradnya.
Yeah, same here, Amisha. Like it's been like even before the session, talking with you and Pooja, like it's been quite interesting throughout this journey has been, and definitely like your entire career of 28 years plus from retail to again social is like quite an inspiration in itself. And all the punk initiatives and already all such initiatives that you shared, they were quite inspiring, and definitely like from product perspective, it would be inspiring for us also to look into social enterprises also. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining Product
Thanks.
Thanks Peter.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
See you next time.
See you.
Bye.